We've started a brand new subject today, and I know that you've been anxious to learn about this one. This is called the subject of the gift of the discerning of spirits. And we are going to be talking about evil spirits primarily. I know that a lot of people don't like to talk about evil spirits. They say, oh, let's talk about Jesus. Let's talk about Jesus, and believe me, there is nothing that I want to do more than anything is to talk about Jesus. I want my conversation to be centered around Jesus Christ. But I also know that there comes a time in every believer's life when we have to talk about evil spirits. Why? Because we enjoy talking about them? No. We need understanding in the knowledge of them. That's why. You see, we are taught in Ephesians where it says, put on the whole armor of God, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Take unto you the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit. We have to learn to wield the sword of the Spirit. Take unto you the breastplate of righteousness. Take unto you the feet. You're having your feet shod to the preparation of the gospel of peace. And your loins girt about with truth. This is the armor that a Christian is supposed to have, to wear. Why? Because you're going to go out to play marbles? My father was in 2 world wars, and he wore certain things in World War I that he didn't wear in World War II. Some of the things that he wore in World War I were used for cold weather, and even their equipment wasn't quite the same. Why did they need to go into the battle with armor, guns? Why didn't they just go dressed in their uniforms? Well, anybody should know that answer. You're fighting an enemy, right? Isn't that correct? Tell me, do you just let the enemy come after you? Will, blow his guns at you, Gatling guns and machine guns? Do you just stand there and say, okay, go ahead. All I'm going to talk about is my home country. That's all I'm going to talk about is my home country. Isn't America and Canada wonderful? Oh, wonderful. God save America. God save Canada. Great. You know what the old enemy would do? You had it, boy. And I find that this is one of the reasons that so many Christians are getting shot down these days, because we hardly even know who our enemy is. We talk about the devil as though there is only one devil. Yeah, there is the big boy. Old Slewfoot, we'll call him. But there are many other evil spirits. And of course, to get into this subject, a lot of Christians become uneasy. They say, we don't want to talk about the devil. Well, listen, if you're going to go into a war, don't you find out where the enemy camps are? Don't you find out what kind of equipment they're using so that you can have the upper hand and get after them? Don't you find out their tactics? Don't you get to know everything about the enemy as much as you can, where their strongholds are, so that you can go in and defeat them? Isn't that the purpose of knowing about the enemy? Over and over and over again, I hear people say, well, listen, don't even give it a thought. Don't even try to even analyze any of it. We want to talk about Jesus. Everybody's talking about the devil. Listen, it's high time the believer got some understanding in the works of the darkness, because so many Christians these days are living defeated lives. They don't even know how to go into the battlefield to be victorious. Half of the time, the Christians are running like a scared rabbit in the other direction. Do you know that there is no armor prepared for the back of a person? It's all for the front. You just mention evil spirits, and oh my goodness, you Christians go, whoop, I'm getting out of here. How are we ever going to win a battle if we're afraid of the enemy? How are we ever going to win a battle if we don't know their tactics? How are we going to go into the fight unless we are acquainted with the ways of the enemy so that we'll know how to defeat him and all of his hordes? You think for 1 minute we're going into the battle to fight one person? Oh, we're going to have our eyes opened. Oh, we're going to see some things that we've never seen before. Why? Because I say we're going to see some things with our spiritual eyes. When we talk about evil spirits, we're not going to be talking about little Casper the ghost. We're going to call this, we're going to call this our hex education class. We're going to talk about evil spirits to the point that you're no longer going to fear them. And not only in not fearing them, for those of you who feel that you are bound by evil spirits, you're going to be delivered. You're going to be set free. For those of you who think you have evil spirits and do not, and are carried away with great emotionalism, we're going to try to help you learn the difference between temptation, sin, spirit, emotions, and the flesh. And if we teach you all of these different varieties of things, when we talk about evil spirits and where they come from and how they get into us and how we get rid of them and all of the understanding that we need to know on evil spirits, you'll be at peace in your hearts. You'll be at peace as believers because you will now be equipped in knowing how to handle a situation, and you won't run like a scared rabbit every time somebody says evil spirit. Instead, you will see someone then who is in genuine need and needs deliverance, and you're going to be able to move in with great power and authority and be able to cast out that spirit that is making life terribly miserable for that other person. I'm going to give you many illustrations on this because I think we need this in order to be able to appreciate the type of ministry we're going into. We are now out in the deep water. Remember back in our first seminar on the introduction to spiritual gifts, we said to you that we were going to learn to swim. And I gave you the illustration, didn't I, of going down in the water, huh? You go down in the water. Your first time in the water, and you're going to learn how to now breathe, right? You've got to learn how to breathe in order to swim. So when you go down, you blow out. You come up. You breathe in. You go down, you breathe out again. That's your first lesson in swimming. I told you it took me 2 one-hour sessions to learn how to do that. And I was scared silly of the deep end of the water. You know, I didn't know how to swim. Well, this is the part now where we're actually going into the deep water. An instructor never takes you into the deep water until you learn how to float, right? And then you learn how to do the breaststroke or whatever, all the things that go into swimming. But they never get you to dive off of the diving board into the deep water until you've actually learned how to overcome the fear of all of these other things, right? So now that we have gone into the other gifts of the Spirit, I think maybe we can take you into the deep water now. Now that you know I'm not going to, scare you half silly about all of these things. We want to be able to bring the understanding of evil spirits to the place where we're not going to be afraid anymore. We're going to have understanding in it, and our hearts will be at peace, and that's what I want more than anything else. We've got to know our enemy. We must. And so I know that while there are many who do not want to talk about evil spirits, for those of you who do want to understand it, I know that you're going to be tuned in every seminar in order to be able to get more understanding in it. So we've got to start right back at base 1. We have got to understand what spirit really is. What is spirit? Think about it for just a minute, will you? What is spirit? S-P-I-R-I-T. And until we can understand what spirit is, we're going to have a problem in relating to evil spirits because we'll be afraid. The scriptures teach us that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And of course, we don't want the people of God to perish in any way, shape, or form. And while we are looking at spirit and going to understand what spirit is, we are also going to understand the definition of the word discern, because we are talking about the gift of the discerning of spirits. There is no such thing as the gift of discernment. A lot of people talk about the gift of discernment. There is a natural judgment, a natural astutement in judgment, an ability to discern or insight. But it has nothing to do with the gift of the discerning of spirits. This is the discerning of spirits and spirits only. Some people get, I think, this thing they call the gift of discernment mixed up with the gift of the word of wisdom. And it's a complete different thing. So, what is your definition of the word discern? Let me give you here two objects. What is this? What is this object? It's a felt pen, isn't it? What is this object? It's a pencil. My, you're an intelligent bunch. Oh, that took a university degree to come up with that one, didn't it? You have discerned, correct? You have discerned between a felt pen, marker pen, and a pencil. You've discerned it. You have distinguished or apprehended clearly. You have seen. You have sorted out. That's the definition of the word discern, to sort out, to distinguish between two objects, right? Now, when it comes to the discerning of spirits, this is exactly what we're going to do in this study. We're going to discern between Satan, evil spirits, angels, if you will, the Spirit of God, the natural spirit of man. We're going to discern what spirit is that we are looking at, just like you're discerning between the marker pen and the pencil. You're discerning between the two, distinguishing the difference. Now, a lot of people today are attributing the works of God to the works of Satan, and the works of Satan to the works of God. How can we distinguish which spirit it is that is manifesting itself? Now, you see, I could stand up here and really start carrying on. You know, I could maybe do a powwow and start screaming, carry on here for a half an hour and just, run up and down the aisles and just really go to town. What spirit would I be manifesting? Well, some people have accused me of having some kind of evil spirits when I did this. But actually, all I would be doing is manifesting the natural spirit of man, which would be Mary Goddard, eh? Mary Goddard wanted to show off a little bit. She wanted to be all the attention. So therefore, if everybody else is sitting quietly and no one's getting noticed, well, then Mary would have to get up and start doing her thing in order to get some attention. So the natural spirit of man would decide, well, I'm going to get up and start dancing around and screaming and hollering, and maybe I can get some attention here. I'm not getting enough. But you see, in some meetings, people are allowed to do this. They say and do things, and they act sort of strangely in meetings, and immediately it's attributed to one thing. Either they say it's of God or they say it's of the devil. And so, if some people think it's of the devil, then immediately they go over to the person and start casting out a bunch of devils. And if they say it's of God, now they don't quite know what to do with it if it's of God. Don't stop it if it's of God, but, we just don't know quite what to do. So if they let it carry on and they say it's of God, then people who know that it isn't of God are turned off. And they say, who needs that in here? I'm getting out of here. If that's of God, I don't want it. So where are you at? How are you going to know? A bit confusing, isn't it? Well, then what we need to know is, since we've discovered what discern means, to distinguish, and in our study, and it's going to take us a little while to get through this study on the gift of the discerning of spirits, and I want you to give me just a little bit of time while we lay some groundwork so that you won't be afraid of spirit. I'm not going to go right into the process of casting them out. We've got to understand what spirit is before we go into the aspect of casting them out. And I'm going to tell you something here too, just before I go any further. Discerning spirits is to distinguish the spirits. The casting them out is another gift. That is the gift of faith and the gift of performing of miracles. Oh, so very interesting. The discerning them is one thing, but the casting them out is quite another. And it takes the gift of faith and the gift of performing of miracles then to cast out. Because you're seeing an instant change in that person's life. That person no longer does what they do. Even the countenance on their face changes. Their habits change. So, we're going to look at the word spirit. What is spirit? How do we define it? Well, if you want to write this down, do so, please, because you might forget it very easily. It is a living, invisible personality. A living, invisible personality. I am not going to go into a long study on body, soul, and spirit. I know that there are many highly qualified theologians who can get into this subject and teach you on this subject, and I know that this could run into many seminars, just like we're teaching on the gifts of the Spirit. It's running into a number of seminars. But so the teaching on the body, soul, and spirit can run into a long series of sessions, and I'm not going to go into that, but I do have to touch on it just a little bit. And so I'm trusting that for those of you who are highly qualified in this field, that you will bear with me and love me in spite of the fact that I am not going to go into some of these areas. The only thing that we're wanting to study is how to understand spirit so that we can enter into the gift of the discerning of spirits and see people delivered in the name of Jesus. Spirit now is a living, invisible personality. Every one of you have spirit or life in you, because that's what spirit is. Spirit is life. All life is spirit, and all spirit is life. You've got a life inside of you. You've got a life inside of you. You have life inside of you. Life is spirit. And it is also personality. The soul is a different situation. You also have a body. The body is made of flesh. And we read in 2 Corinthians 5:16, it says, henceforth, or that is right from this moment on, know we no man after the flesh, but after the Spirit, after the life that is in that body. Now we talk about people having different personalities, right? Every one of us here have a different personality, a different life within us. It's the life within us that is spirit. You talk of a horse. My, isn't that horse spirited? It's got a lot of life, right? Wasn't that what you're referring to? Some people have more life in them than others. We say that, oh boy, hasn't that person got lots of moxie? Meaning, boy, they're full of life. And I believe that when people are filled with the Holy Spirit, it should be said of all of us that we are full of life, so that people are wanting that same life of Christ that we have. But the natural spirit of man, that's what makes you alive. If you did not have life or spirit within you, you would be out there pushing up daisies. Right, you'd be dead, wouldn't you, if you did not have life in you? That's very natural, very understanding. It's not hard to understand. Spirit is life, and life is spirit. And in order for us to understand a little bit more, I'm going to have to ask you to come back next time, and we'll share with you some more on it.